The first presentation title is RISC-V, truly everywhere, from automotive to enterprise. The speaker is Ms. Calista Redmond, CEO, RISC-V International. RISC-V International is a global non-profit association based on Switzerland. Founded in 2015, RISC-V brings together more than 2,000 members in more than 70 countries across industries and technical disciplines. RISC-V supports the free and open RISC instruction set architecture, developing additional extensions tools. Ms. Calista Redmond is the CEO of the RISC-V International with a mission to expand and engage RISC-V within and beyond RISC-V International. Prior to RISC-V International, Calista held a variety of roles at IBM, including Vice President of the IBM Z ecosystem, where she led strategic relationships across software vendors, system integrators, business partners, developer communities, and broader engagement across the industry. So presentation is 40 minutes long. So when 30 minutes has passed, I ring a bell. Okay, so that means 5 minutes left. So Q&A session is 10 minutes long. 10 minutes long. So would you come to the microphone?
Thank you for your kind introduction. Looks good?
Yes.
All right. We are thumbs up. We are ready to go. So, konnichiwa, ohayou gozaimasu. I am very pleased to be here with you. Thank you so much. Does it get taller? I'm kind of tall. Yes. Thank you.
So would you come close?
Is this better? Well, at least for those in the room, I'm sure you can hear me. I'm kind of a loud person. I tend to use my mom voice a lot. So apologies in advance. I am so excited to be here with you today. We are at a turning point in history. That turning point is something that we have seen for 100 more years. Why have we been seeing a turning point for more than 100 years? Because the world continues to progress. The world progresses through opportunities to overcome challenges. Those challenges are diverse. They can be societal. It can be things like a pandemic. It can be opportunities like technology or putting someone on the moon or into outer space. By the way, RISC-V is in outer space now. So we are excited because whenever we overcome challenges, whenever we seize opportunities for the long haul, for the strategic future of not only the technical things we're working on, but for mankind, we do it when we come together. We don't do it alone. We've seen this more recently in the last 20 years in open source, in the software world, where folks came together around Linux, and Linux now runs most of the major systems in the world. Financial systems would collapse. I won't even tell you what would happen to airplanes. We are now at that threshold in hardware. And by the way, hardware started this, right? We saw open standards cultivated in the UK and England more than 100 years ago. And those open standards are things that persist today. It's okay, I can hold it too. Oh, they've taped it down. They're not going to let me walk around. No walking around today. So Let me know if we can't hear, if those who are watching live can't hear me. And thank you for joining us online, especially if you're transcending time zones, which so many of us get to do in our lives. So we're here today to talk about RISC-V and the important inflection point we're at in the industry. And there are three key things that we're going to talk about today. Some of this is to talk about the doubts that might be out there. But most of this is to talk about the opportunity and why now is the right time to engage, to commit yourselves, to commit your companies, to adopt a strategy that goes forward, not just for this year or this quarter or next year or next quarter, but for the strategic future going decades ahead. RISC-V will underpin computing for decades to come, the next generations of compute, and we'll understand why. But first, the three things I want you to remember. RISC-V is inevitable. It's here today. It's got a roaring start. It is only accelerating. The pedal is all the way to the floor. Number two, RISC-V enables the best processors. Now, best can be defined in many different ways. Best could be defined as performance, or as in power, or as in space consumption on that chip. RISC-V allows you to have the best processor. The best processor is going to make you more competitive. It's going to give you that leading edge. Third, RISC-V is rapidly building the strongest ecosystem. This is not going to take decades. This is already happening. In fact, many companies are already pinning their future to it because it is already there in formation. And the pieces that are not quite production ready today are underway. So let's think about those three things. RISC-V is inevitable. 10 billion plus cores in market already. No one's waiting for that full ecosystem. Those cores are in market already. You see them in smartphones enabling Wi-Fi, enabling Bluetooth. You see them in data centers as accelerators, as AI performance indicators. This is happening today. RISC-V is inevitable from the very low end where we started and embedded all the way to the high end, from the lowest power to the highest performance. RISC-V is here. And that shared collective investment, similar to what we've seen in other industries, but the shared collective investment of an entire community stands behind this. RISC-V is inevitable because it is not tied to any one country or company's strategy. Other architectures are, in fact, tied to single company strategies. And that puts too much risk in the equation for you to pin your strategic future to it. RISC-V is inevitable because the world wants choice. The world wants design flexibility. The world is hungry for the opportunities that only RISC-V can deliver. Well, what are those alternatives? First, you have a very strong and compelling architecture that goes all the way to the foundry, from IP to foundry, a microprocessor model. This is the Intel model, right? So yeah, you can get chips from a couple of different providers. You can, it's a bit of a struggle to get an architecture license. You can get commercial IP, but there are there are limits on how many vendors are possible. You can't really have the design freedom and flexibility. There's another model out there that is pretty much just an IP model, a proprietary ISA only that has lots of chips. This is ARM, right? But to get the architectural license, it's expensive. And it could take you 1 or 2 years just to negotiate that license. And an ever-shifting business model calls into question the longevity of that architecture license. So think about where you pin your hopes. RISC-V, on the other hand, has opened the aperture, has opened the opportunity for both development partners, IP partners, foundries, as well as design flexibility. You have both the technical as well as the business value behind what RISC-V has to offer. Let's talk about the collective investment. Tens of billions of dollars are going into RISC-V. That dwarfs the entire revenue of one of those other architecture companies for last year. With tens of billions of dollars being invested in open hardware as a base building block that is collectively brought forward not just by companies but by nations and regions, that collective investment is accelerating momentum. It's accelerating technical progress, it's accelerating adoptions, it's accelerating production. RISC-V is inevitable. For those of you who remember what happened in Linux, let's just go back to that history lesson for a minute. In the 80s, we were all kind of frustrated because there was really a single shop in town that offered an operating system. And the world said, you know what? Our hands are tied, and we don't like that. We want more flexibility, more freedom in software. In 2001, IBM planted a $1 billion flag on Linux and said, you know what? I can have my proprietary software, and I can have an open strategy. Were they worried about cannibalizing their proprietary business? Not really. They looked at the future. And they said the future is about collaboration. And they have been pretty good at collaboration with development partners, channel partners, routes to market, as well as developing their own products. Both proprietary and open. That's what Intel said last February when they planted their $1 billion flag on RISC-V. Both proprietary and open. And that's the promise that we all have. You don't have to be a multinational to participate in RISC-V. There are more startups today in RISC-V than any other architecture in history. More startups on RISC-V. When was it this cool to be in microprocessor business? You used to have millions of dollars, hundreds of engineers in your own foundry to just get in the game. Guess what? Everyone's in the game now because the barriers of entry are gone. I have venture capitalists coming to me very regularly saying, oh, who's the next new hot RISC-V startup? Where should I place my bet? I have RISC-V startups saying, hey, what VC should I talk to? Do you know I have a VC on our board? A venture capitalist is on the board of directors for RISC-V who has a $1 billion fund dedicated only to RISC-V startups in China. That's a testament to the power of lower barriers to entry with profound opportunity. We have countries and regions, the European Union, India, Pakistan, many others who are saying, you know what? We want to grow hardware and technical merit in our country. So they're investing locally, but they're demanding that the output, that the fruition of those investments plant a seed to act globally, not to act just within the borders of their own country, but to say take an open approach because that allows you to have as many development partners, routes to market, supply chain, and that reduces the risk of those investments. And it creates a strategic future that self-funds going forward. You can tell I'm kind of excited about RISC-V. Well, I'm not the only one. Analysts are saying that RISC-V is growing off the charts. With 10 billion cores in market already, we are well on this growth curve. We are expected to hit 80 billion cores in market by 2025. Where are they going? Well, there's high volume already evident in IoT and embedded in automotive. By 2025, RISC-V will consume 10% of automotive, 12% on industrial, and 28% in IoT. That's because that's where we started. If you've been in hardware a while, you know it takes time. It takes, a couple of years at best, 3 to 5 years on average, to get a product all the way to market. So we are now starting to see the results of folks who've been investing over the last 3 to 5 years. And if you're not already committing strategic value and merit to RISC-V, now is the time, because you're already playing some catch-up here. As the overall market grows, there are fewer and fewer entrenched areas where there's limited opportunity. What do I mean by that? If you're sitting in a large multinational organization and you have invested millions of dollars and hundreds of engineers into another architecture, it is a very difficult and career-changing move to go to the boss and say, hey, let's get rid of all that. That's not a good day for you. It might be exciting, but it's not going to go well. Instead, saying, hey, how about we augment our existing processors with some microcontrollers, get our feet wet, get the wheels going on RISC-V. Let's add AI so we're more competitive. Let's add acceleration so we are more competitive. That's a conversation you can have. If you're a startup, you don't have to worry about that conversation. Let's go RISC-V. This is one of the oldest charts in my deck. The picture on the right is from 2 years ago, November 2020. At that time, nearly a quarter of all design starts already included RISC-V. You wonder how we get to 10 billion? That's how. These are things that are already in motion because RISC-V truly is inevitable. Deloitte's predicting we continue to double every year. Ask a multinational who has any growth rate in any part of their portfolio that's doubling every year. That's a pretty good business to be in. All right, let's get to point number 2. I know, I said I had 3 points, and I'm already filled up the room with information. So RISC-V enables the best processors. Why is that? Well, it's largely technical, but it's part business as well. So first of all, we have reserved coding space. We have various extensions that you can add onto the base ISA, things that allow you the design flexibility to customize to the exact workload that you're looking to meet. This does not carry with it the legacy baggage of other ISAs. So RISC-V starts you with 47 base instructions, and then you add on to that what is required for your design. Other architectures start you off with 1,500 extensions. Here's the whole thing. You can then, maybe add on to that if you have the flexibility and the massively expensive license to do so. That design flexibility and freedom allows you to adjust many variables to truly get the best outcome, the best processor. The business side of this is that this is supported by a massive community. Everyone in our community is recognizing that RISC-V is the future, and whether they have investment in another architecture today or not, diversifying out to multiple architectures makes a lot of good business sense. It's like when you look at the stock market, putting everything on one stock is probably not the wisest move. Having diversity of business units, business lines, business interests is very similar to working on multiple architectures. That's what our tool companies are doing, our design assistants, and other ways to help make this more feasible to you. So it is both a technical discussion as well as a business discussion. So open hardware and standard ways of doing things. This RISC-V is an open standard. That's different than open source. RISC-V is an open standard because once we get to a state of perfection, we freeze it, and it's not going to change thereafter. You can count on it. You don't have to worry that we're going to change it going forward. With that, we then add lots of different extensions that matter to the design you're trying to make. That allows you to compose your design for precision. On the business side, you have massive choice. You have choice of who you can work with as a design partner, in a supply chain, as your channel, as your routes to market, in the implementations and the utility of those, as well as the different IP that is coming out from many of these different design houses. That shared investment, that collective investment is accelerating everything from independent designs and implementations to the ecosystem that surrounds it. So we are all working together as a community to upstream into critical software, as well as to push the boundaries of the state of the art. So thinking about the sustained performance and efficiency advantages, there are many benchmarks out there already today that show that we have designed extensions with ease, with simplicity in mind. And this is important. We don't want to burden your engineers with highly complex ways of doing things. We are not bringing with any of that other legacy baggage where other architectures have been built incrementally over time. And that's why you have so many of those base extensions. So we also have reserved coding space that you can leverage for your designs or for the requirements for where you're looking to act. This is not the first time that global standards have overtaken a part of the hardware space. The most notable of these is in networking. Once upon a time, you had Token Ring and all kinds of other proprietary solutions that really demanded that your entire data center came from one provider. Wow, talk about vendor lock-in. Now, with the advance of Ethernet as a global standard, you can pick and choose anything you like that fits into plug and play with that Ethernet global standard. And now those proprietary networking protocols are nearly obsolete. That's what we're seeing happen with RISC-V, and what may also continue to happen across the rest of the space. In operating systems, we still have proprietary options, but we have a lot of growth in open options as well. So these are some examples. We still have proprietary ISAs, but the world is quickly moving to an open standard ISA. We have a lot going on. I know the print is getting a little small on this page, but we are quickly progressing not just extensions that bring us to parity with other architectures, but extensions that bring us leading edge, such as Vector. We are also progressing with various industry applications. We have an Android special interest group, we have data center, we have acceleration, we have a number of these around security. Security is paramount across all of them. Blockchain simulators, functional safety, many of these things that are critical. In the future, we are now also starting, actually this month, special interest groups on the marketing side of the house as well, market development groups that will help us to identify where are the data that are really driving decisions, where are the events that we need to show up at, who are the analysts that we need to engage in. So we are complementing the technical work with the visibility work on the marketing side. As I mentioned, performance benchmarks are continuing to gain ground. If anyone in our community has more benchmarks that they'd like to add to this, I would be more than happy to share those. But as we continue to see progress in the community, we are continuing to have compelling results, performance results, power consumption results, the best processor results. So let's talk about that ecosystem for a minute. If you are in the open space, open standards, you realize, allow multiple applications to adhere to them at one time. That enables choice. Choice is paramount in today's business and technical dynamics. So to have that freedom of choice as in who you work with is critical. Toolchain and operating system support. We have groups that are specialized and focused on upstreaming into many of the most common packages. And, by the way, we're taking a single hypervisor approach. This is a bit different than some of our other architecture options out there. This is bringing thousands of developers to RISC-V. We count around 10,000 today. These aren't on staff. The staff at RISC-V is a bit small because we work with the community. It is our job at RISC-V to orchestrate and steward the best governance and the best output of the community. And so that's our role. But we are counting on the engagement, dedication, contribution of our members to actualize this work. Now, if you're in the ecosystem, if you have an application and you've been running on one or two architectures already, or versions of those architectures, we'll get to versions of architectures in a minute, it only makes business sense for you to run also on RISC-V. That's business opportunity for you. That's technical opportunity for you. To engage now is opportunity. So let's talk about taking a unified approach. You know, a lot of folks throw around the word fragmentation. What does fragmentation really mean? Fragmentation means doing the same thing in different ways. In some parts of the world, the driving, steering wheel in a car is on the left, and other parts of the world, it's on the right. Both cars need to get to the same place and need to be able to turn the wheels. Same thing, done different ways. There are forces that work against fragmentation. The biggest force are open standards. When we agree on the base building blocks, on the common elements that are critical to everyone, we avoid fragmentation. Fragmentation also can happen when there's frustration with a single vendor lock-in. As end users, no one wants vendor lock-in. We realize that negotiating power, competitive edge, and competitive differentiation is lost when there's only one option in town. So there are forces working against fragmentation. The software stack. So who can afford to rebuild that entire ecosystem single-handedly? That's a major force working against fragmentation. So if you're a hardware shop, if you're a design shop, and you're like, well, I think I'm going to take a left turn here, you're on your own. And it is extremely expensive to recreate an entire ecosystem. By taking a shared collaborative approach, no one wants to go support that. No single company or nation can support their own full ecosystem. It takes all of us as a community working together to fuel that ecosystem, and that's what we see happening. So some of our alternative architectures already have some levels of fragmentation. One of the examples that I heard about recently was that, this first bullet down here, trust zone and secure boot operate differently on different payment processing systems. So this is like where you do your credit card or your phone to make a payment. Samsung, Google, Apple Pay, they all work differently. Why? That's bananas, right? Wouldn't it be better if we had one global standard way of doing that? Well, that ship may have sailed already, but we can prevent further examples of that going forward by coming together for common shared approaches and agreeing on what those standards are, and then compete on other variables. Diversity. We focus on diversity. Let's prevent fragmentation and let's enable diversity. By having common building blocks that we can all glue into and attach to, while allowing your differentiation on top of and around that, that's diversity. That enables you to make a fancier steering wheel, but let's all do it on the right side this time. So lots of different ways that we're doing this. As I mentioned, a single hypervisor approach. We are cultivating not just raw extensions, but compositions of those in profiles and platforms. Those common recipe kits will be coming out, and those are the ways that we are going to promote diversity while guarding against fragmentation. We have many technical programs. We have developer board programs that help seed the ecosystem to help get those workloads up and rolling on RISC-V. We have development partners as well as labs that include groups of folks, hardware, to help bring many of those extensions through the process with us. And we have compatibility standards. So we have architectural tests that help you ascribe compatibility, and we'll be rolling those out with profiles and platforms as well. This opportunity continues to grow. We continue to see huge growth in the IP because not everyone has their own microprocessor R&D department, but there are many of these startups that have very valuable IP that can bring you that differentiation. We also see continued growth in software and tools. I know that this chart doesn't exactly show how tremendous that is because it is dwarfed by the IP opportunity. However, it is very strong and growing. That rich ecosystem is growing very fast. This slide doesn't actually even cover it. We're working on a new slide, but it's taking us some time because there are so many workloads that are now on RISC-V. The basics are all here. We see that because we already have 10 billion cores in market. We wouldn't have that if the basics weren't already there. So let's talk about various industries and markets. We've seen a lot of activity and investment in 2022. We see this from Intel. We see this from the European Union. We continue to see this in the collaboration between partners. In Paris and NSI Texi have both been recognized for their collaborations. And by the way, NSI Texi is one of the most collaborative organizations that I've seen across our membership. They have many different partnerships going on. Intel continues to invest around the world. And we see startups like Sci-Fi gaining tremendous attention and growth from the VC community. We see progress going on in laptops. We see, the government of India switching completely over to RISC-V in their technical agenda. We see companies like MIPS who have fully switched over to RISC-V for their entire portfolio. We see countries like Spain getting in. We see everything from HPC down to embedded. This is important. HPC has a lot of attributes, a lot of workload characteristics that we are now bringing to data center and cloud. Competitive distinction to accelerate workloads, to mine the data for machine learning or AI, to be able to enact the same kind of outputs that we've seen in HPC are now coming into cloud and data center. Imagination and MIPS have both started to talk more about not just data center but automotive. You'll see some of that coming out in the fourth quarter. High performance capabilities. We've seen this coming out with Esperanto and Alibaba as they bring RISC-V to the data center. This is important, right? Because for a long time, there were proponents out there that said, oh, RISC-V is just for embedded. It is from embedded all the way through to enterprise, and we're seeing this at scale. Seagate, Qualcomm, and others have stepped up in RISC-V, deepened their investment, shifted teams and strategy over to RISC-V. We see folks, capitalizing not just on the opportunity, but realizing that to reach for that opportunity, they need to invest and make it a strategic choice now. So we see that with Andes and Alibaba. Alibaba did a great help for the entire community in bringing Android onto RISC-V. And now we have tighter connections with the Android community. In fact, at our summit coming up in December, you'll hear directly from Android on that progress and on that importance. So we're continuing to see great progress there. Consumer and IoT devices, Swami has been doing this for several years now. Greenwaves and others are continuing to bring RISC-V into consumer IoT devices. In AI and ML, I've mentioned this a few times, but the opportunity is tremendous. Who gets a 73% CAGR on anything, Across industries, we're seeing such an explosion in opportunity, and we're seeing a great number of companies who are capitalizing on that. So NVIDIA has supported CUDA in the past. I know there's some debate about that now. Alibaba continues investing, Esperanto, Star5, Andes. These are all folks who are looking at RISC-V for those competitive differentiators that are important in the market. Edge computing. So we've seen this here at the show as we are today. We've seen many different examples of edge computing ranging from our friends at Google and Andes and others on the show floor. It's been great to get out there and meet everyone. And then in high-performance computing, there's a lot of core to the high-performance computing interest for RISC-V in Europe. So we've seen this with, companies like E4 or institutes like Barcelona Supercomputing Center. By the way, BSC, congratulations to them. They've received several awards at Supercompute that is going on also this week in Dallas. So we're continuing to see progressing the state of the art in HPC on RISC-V. Now I know we're not, on the top of the leaderboard there yet, but making it functionally possible is step one, and we've already passed that step. Let's talk about automotive. I've got a couple of pages on automotive. Automotive is hugely important. When you think about, decisions that space agencies have made to go with RISC-V, it's for decades to come. It's for the next 30 years. And what's good enough for them is now good enough also for automotive. We are meeting the safety and security specifications. We are seeing RISC-V being more broadly adopted in automotive. We're continuing to see tremendous collaboration between partners in automotive, IAR and Sci-Fi, Andes. These have been some of the latest news coming out. And this is one of the areas of rapid growth. As your car starts to do everything but cook you dinner before you get home, we're starting to see those processors in every corner of it. And that's something that RISC-V has ample opportunity to capture. So from Mobileye, Renesas and Sci-Fi teaming together, Imagination and Green Hills, everyone is starting to move and shift strategically to working with RISC-V. This is a testament to the community. It is not a testament to Calista knocking on their door and saying, hey, what do you think about RISC-V? It's because the community is surrounding them and saying, hey, we're going RISC-V and we need you to come with. Here's the volume, here's the projection, here's the customer, come with us. And they are signing up in droves. Also in automotive, as I mentioned, MIPS and Imagination are both coming out with some very compelling things this fourth quarter. IAR, NSI Taxi, and Amparis. NSI Taxi, you are collaborating with everyone. We're so impressed with this. It is leadership like this that is a role model to our community. By the way, you can all have these charts later. One thing I want to just remind us, every single one of us is dependent on the other. In a way, we're a community. A community is like a town. You have your farmers, your doctors, your teachers. We are all working together. And in our community, we are all working together as well. A community is not just derived from the interests of a single institution or a single company. A community is derived because of the collective interests that we have together in building momentum, in building a strategic future together. A community is not based on a single transaction. A community is based on building relationships that matter. In our community, we have over 80 different work groups, technical work groups, the brightest minds in the industry coming together to bring the state-of-the-art forward, to bring the future forward on RISC-V. This is important. This is an opportunity to engage. In Japan, we continue to see great, I think that's my 5-minute bell. I'm almost there. In Japan, we continue to see great collaboration, but I think there's more to be done. I'll just be honest with you. We see a lot faster, deeper growth in other regions than we have in Japan. Now, maybe it's going on back in the R&D center. Maybe it's going on after hours on the weekends. But this is strategically important. RISC-V is the future, and if you're not engaging as an organization, someone else will. This is an opportunity to step forward for leadership. And I invite and implore the organizations in Japan who have not yet come forward to really think critically about this. Understand the dynamics of the market, the opportunity for competitive differentiation. Today we have more than 3,100 members across 70 different countries, evenly split between North America, Europe, and APAC. You saw the list of who's in Japan earlier. Not enough. I want to bring more strength, more strategic importance to RISC-V in Japan. And so I was thrilled that I got to be here with you today. But why join RISC-V International? We provide 6 different things to our members, 6 different programs. Number 1, most important, technical deliverables. We need your strategic insight together with the best minds from around the world to drive these extensions forward, because once we freeze them, they do stand the test of time. They will not change. Bring in your strategic intent, bring in your engineers, work side by side with us. We also bring about compatibility and verification. These are the test suites. Marketing and RISC-V exchange. These are the ways that we become a center of gravity for all things RISC-V. If you go on our website, you can find the exchange. That's a listing of everything from online learning to course and everything in between. On marketing, we're here to amplify the success of our members. I'm not here to talk about what RISC-V is doing. There's only a couple pages on that. I'm here to talk about what the community is doing. That speaks louder than anything we as a nonprofit could possibly do. Learning and talent, advocacy, and alliances. These are the ways we work with academic institutions, online learning, community groups, local on-the-ground groups of engineers. We have a couple dozen alliances, more than a dozen ambassadors, including Flo, who's here today. And we work tirelessly to connect engineers to other engineers to help accelerate their journey on RISC-V. So engage. And why? Think about what it will do for your company, for your institution. Promote your leadership in this industry. Garner talent, build your talent, and retain your talent. 80% of companies today are looking for talent that have open source experience. It's the same for hardware. Your most valued talent wants to work with other experts in the field, in the domain. They don't want to be stuck in a corner of the organization working only on that organization's priorities. They want to engage with their peers, and you've never seen a more passionate community than that which we have in RISC-V. Deepen and engage your network, build those connections for your own future. So think about where RISC-V fits into your personal mission, your company and your team's mission, and your company and where you're going in the future. So I look forward to your questions. I hope that you will stay connected with us and feel welcome to reach out to me at any time.
And? So the session is open for the Q&A. So any questions? Okay, I have a few questions. First one is what industries are most progressing the fastest on the RISC-V?
So we have seen the most progress already on the embedded end. So embedded is where we began. That is where we started to see a lot of the early prototypes now coming to market. And that also translates into volume. I mean, when you're looking at millions of cell phones with RISC-V, it's easier to envision that than millions of servers at this stage. So we are seeing that same level of prototyping of early experimentation going on across the full spectrum, and we expect to see even more of that traction more evenly spread across the compute spectrum in the years to come.
So second question. So, sorry, I mispronounced RISC-V. Sorry, RISC-V.
It happens all the time.
So very different. So because written letter is V. So sorry. So second one is why should companies get involved in RISC-V?
I think it is strategically important. When your company looks at how you engage with your most valued relationships, those valued relationships are your development partners, your customers, your employees. As you think about how you build and progress those relationships, those who have taken an open and highly collaborative approach often find that they are accelerating their technical roadmap, are accelerating and building and growing their routes to market, as well as their customer base. Because customers can count on something that has billions in collective investment that is assured for the future. Customers are hesitating to double down on something that has only one driver, that has only one owner of the future of that technology. And that's something that is very tangible. You can measure that. And companies do measure things, right? I mean, as you mentioned earlier, I spent a lot of time at IBM before I took on this job. And you never get to go to the boss and say, hey, I've got a really cool technology. They look at you like, okay, and show me the opportunity, show me the revenue opportunity, show me the cost savings, show me how we're accelerating our path from point A to point B. You need that full argument. By taking a collective collaborative approach, you allay many of those concerns.
The third one is more direct question. So would you comment on the kind of market share comparison in comparison with ARM?
Up until 2020, until 2 years ago, RISC-V was not even on the map as it comes to market share. Hardware takes time, right? We were born in, 2015 as an organization? Hardware takes time. So up until about 2020, you looked at a map of market share of any microprocessor, and there were 2 names on there. And RISC-V wasn't there. 99% of the market? And then the other 1% was just called other because it was other stuff, probably mainframes and power and Spark and other things. So that is not true anymore today. I don't know the exact market share. The major analysts are just now starting to ask the question of RISC-V. We're looking at tangible things like how many design starts included RISC-V, as well as analyst projections. Those are the numbers we have to go on.
So, other questions? Please go ahead.
Are there questions in Slack?
We have one Slack question. So question was, a new Japanese company is starting a foundry business from 2 nanometer generation. So can you share your chiplet strategy with RISC-V? RISC-V is a modularity architecture, scalable and flexible. So I think you can create a huge ecosystem in chiplets. This is the question.
So the nuances of how chiplets work relative to other ways of composing and compiling a chip is a little bit beyond my expertise. Okay. I will admit that. Although I think my friends at Intel would be more than happy to share their learnings on chiplets, and I think our friends elsewhere in the community where we have chips already in market with both RISC-V as well as other architectures have taken similar approaches. But I'm highly encouraged that there would be a foundry looking at RISC-V specifically in Japan, and I think chiplets are a very formidable and strong approach to bringing multiple architectures, multiple ways of doing things into a single lab.
Thank you.
All right, let me try this. Domo arigato gozaimasu.
Okay, so let's close. So thank you very much.